Hello, lovely ladies. Welcome to the Lessons I Learned podcast, where I share what I've learned and am still learning about marriage, mothering, friendship, health and wellness, spiritual growth, and everything in between. I'll be learning right along with you, as many of my guests have such great things to say. So get ready to listen, grow, be open and teachable, and get ready to learn and have fun doing it. Well, this is going to be a stretching, perhaps uncomfortable conversation for you to listen to today, but it's imperative that we all listen and learn. My guest, Keri Cardinale, talks about her journey finding out who she truly is, because that's who God says she is. Listen in on our conversation about identity. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in again. I'm so excited to be on this new journey with this new podcast. Thank you to everyone who's read my blogs and read my book. And now I have the awesome opportunity to chat with awesome women and some men along the way on this new Lessons I Learned podcast. And when I was thinking about the first initial guests that I would have for this show, right away, one of the people that came to mind was Keri Cardinale. And well, first of all, hey, Keri, how you doing?
Hi, good. How are you?
Good. Before we go on, I have to get one thing out of the way. You are Keri Cardinale, but you have to tell everybody you have a new name. And so explain here, because I heard you on a radio show just kind of explaining who you are now.
Yeah, well, I do have a new name. So I've been Keri Cardinale for 42 years, and I just got married a few months ago. And so legally, I am Keri Schopp, which is SCHOPP. I dropped Cardinale legally and privately, but because my ministry is known as Keri Cardinale, I've decided to keep Keri Cardinale because my book was coming out, my music's under Keri Cardinale, and you know, of course, my husband Phil, he's like, does not bother me 1 ounce, and I'm like, okay, eventually we'll flip it over, and then I posted on social media Keri Cardinale Schopp just so that people knew that I did get married. So I am officially Keri Schopp, but I am known still as Keri Cardinale.
Well, what a guy. He's a strong dude to be able to have a woman that, takes her name and then, you've had such a platform for so many years, and it's just cool to see all that God's done in your life. And it's funny, when we were chatting the other day on the phone, okay, so I have to give some backstory so all my listeners know who you are. And well, first of all, how we met was initially years ago when we first moved to Buffalo. We went to quite a large church in town called the Chapel, and you were there as well. Both my husband Dan and you were serving in their worship ministry there. And funnily enough, we've kind of moved on, both of us separately from that church, but then we landed at the same home church again somehow, which is Life Church Buffalo, another awesome church in town here. And but sadly, because we both travel, we're kind of in and out, and you're in and out because you're ministering in other churches. And so it's very rare that we actually see one another at church. We kind of, say hi in passing in the hallway. But we're going to have to, fix that sometime. I said to Dan the other night after I talked with you, I was like, we should have them over for, dinner or bonfire or something and, get to know you guys. So,
we would love to. I know it is true. I see you in passing at church, but I feel like we actually had one conversation once at church, but I feel like we had a conversation at the radio station when you were on the Robbie show. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like we finally actually were able to chat.
Yes. And you are no stranger to chatting, because you are you are a part of WDCX, great radio station that's not only heard around Buffalo, but actually in our old home turf in Ontario, in the Toronto area. And you just have such a great ministry, multifaceted. So you're doing a lot of different things. And okay, so let me set you up for my listeners so they all know how fantastic you are.
Okay.
They're going to find that out anyway. So Keri is an avid communicator about real life, a worshiper, author, speaker, life coach, and radio host. And I do know also you have like a massage therapy business too, don't you? So you
Yes,
are
I do.
a busy gal. And so I'm going to skip a couple things here, but I just want to note, because what we're going to go into, you're also the author of a brand new book, which I'm so excited about, called Swing Wide, a story about love, sexual identity, and how God redefined it all. And so I just gave that little bit of a teaser because I know people, their ears might have perked up when I said one thing. So I just know you have so many great things to say. I've actually heard you on the radio a few weeks ago. I heard you talking about this new book on your radio show. And I've got to be honest with you. Those two words, sexual identity, I thought, okay, this is kind of like a touchy, sensitive topic. And I knew I wanted to have you on my show because you're a fantastic communicator. You're a strong woman. You have things to say. And I know people have things that they can learn from you. But because of some of the subject matter of your new book, I was a little hesitant. Like, should we dive in with this right away on my podcast? So I'll be honest with you. But then when I heard you discuss it on your radio show, and then when we chatted the other day, I was like, let's go for it, because you were so wise and grace-filled and just so balanced in everything you had to say. And of course, it's your life story too. So you just have such authority in that. But I'm just kind of setting that part up. But what I want to hear from you is, let's just dive into Swing Wide. What inspired you to write your life story, to even, write a book at all? How, tell the readers where that all came from.
Yeah, I actually never really wanted to write a book. I don't enjoy writing, but it's funny because I went to college for communications, and I remember studying public relations, and I was like, by my third year, I realized that it's all writing, and I thought, I do not want to be, writing in a corner office somewhere for the rest of my life. So I wanted to quit.
Yep.
Keep going, get your degree. Get my degree. Little did I know, years later, I come back to the Lord. I meet my, boss that was at WDCX radio through the worship ministry at the chapel. And he finds out I have a degree in communications, offers me a job in radio, and teaches me how to write, and teaches me to not have this fear in writing. And I ended up in a corner office. Right. And my career for about 9 years, I was at WDCX until I got on air. That they gave me a position on the radio, and then eventually now I have my own show. I co-host with my good friend Robbie Ra. Anyway,
love her.
I did not want to write, but my testimony came out years ago at church. They asked me to share it with the church, and I remember thinking, I do not want to share this about my past, because I don't really know how the church feels about this topic. I mean, I grew up Catholic, and so I came back to the Lord, ended up at the chapel, and I really started to understand and learn about who God was and who Jesus was, and on a deeper level. And, after I gave my life to him, I sort of tucked that old past away. And so when it popped up, the leadership asked if I would share, and I was super scared. Because I was known as a worship leader at the church, and I thought, I don't know if I'm going to lose respect, and how people are going to respond to this. The fact that I was actually living as a lesbian for about 15 years, and I was engaged to a woman, and so I gave them permission to share it, and it was through that people were coming out of the woodwork, sharing that they struggle with the same thing, or they have a son or a daughter or a parent, or they don't know how to handle it. What do I do with this? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know, And so through that process, I started almost coaching people in a way, just by going for coffee and meeting for dinner and just helping people. As time went on, I kept getting asked to speak at churches and women's events and, all these different organizations. And everywhere I would go, people were like, do you have a book? And I'm like, no. And honestly, I don't know if I want to put my heart and soul on paper. That could last forever.
It's hard. Been there, done that. Yeah, it's vulnerable.
Absolutely. And I thought, it's easy for me to talk about it, but when I have to sit down and really, really process through my life, and what the purpose is of why, and I took it to God and I said, if this is what you want me to do, then I'm going to need you to push me to do this. And sure enough, he connected me with a publishing company and gave me a deadline. And if I didn't have a deadline, I would have never done it. So, my inspiration for writing the book was I was asked to share my life story to, and in turn, I knew that it would eventually give somebody hope, especially in the area of sexual identity, and especially mine, which was homosexuality. And so it really, my inspiration became, Lord, you changed my whole life. You transformed me inside and out. And I couldn't even imagine what my life would be now if you didn't do that. So what else could I do except tell the world about who you are and the power that you have in someone's life when they really get to know you? And so that is the inspiration behind, putting my my inner thoughts and deep, dark skeletons in a book.
So before we dive in and you share some of the contents of that you're kind of hinting at, it's funny, when I was listening to your other interview, Robbie Raw pointed something out. The book is called Swing Wide, but I just want you to share a little bit, because you do talk about this in your book as well, and I want you to share with a lot of my listeners are going to be women, and you talk about your struggles with identity and all that, but you also share your struggle with your self-image. And I want you to tell the golf story. And it's so interesting because I right away, when you were talking about you as a golfer, I kind of connected the title Swing Wide to that, but it wasn't even really fully related. But I just thought it was such a great, interesting story for you to be vulnerable and share about your body image, because every woman, I mean, we've all been there. We all deal with something something different on a different level. And I think when we hear stories and women be vulnerable like that, it gives us confidence. Number one, it takes down the lie that, we're the only one feeling this way. And number two, it helps us realize, like, I would have never thought that about you, or I would have never. And then we realize that others aren't so focused on us and as much as we are, and we need to take that off of ourselves. So I just want you to quickly, before you dive into the book, just share that story, because I think it's so cool how God was revealing these things to you. So yeah, go ahead and share the golf story.
Yeah. And to be honest, it all ties together. So
yes,
that's why, the book is not, it's not a gay story. It's a love story. And it comes back to me, even as a child. I was a very happy, like this cute little chubby little child, right? Like I didn't care what anybody thought of me. In fact, I made my mom buy me, I'm 42, so I made her buy me, it was like the 80s, a bikini that was like a bikini top and like culotte shorts, and I'll never forget, like I was so excited to get this thing, but it was, at an early age, I started getting bullied for my size, and that's what drew attention to my size and my issues with my weight, where I was like, whoa, I didn't even realize that people saw me in a different light, like. Right. And then it started really working on my, on my image and my self-esteem and my confidence. And I still carried confidence. People always thought I was confident, but deep down inside, I was really struggling. So it ties into to my relationships, because I never felt confident enough. I always felt like men would look at me with a different view, that, maybe I was too, I like to use the word fluffy or chubby, and maybe I was too much of that. And so I ended up getting really close to my friends that were girls. And I happened to, get involved with one that happened to be a lesbian, and it went off from there. And I sort of got locked into that lifestyle for years. But so I wanted to say, which I could talk more about, but it all ties together because, I had such a poor body image, really, honestly, up until I would say maybe 6 years ago, even into my walk with Jesus, I still, like, he had to really help to turn that around, and he still is continuing, but I'm gaining this new confidence in him that, when I can look in the mirror, and some days I may not like myself, well, I like him, and he created me. So if he
Yeah.
then I have to, I have to choose today, Keri. You have to love yourself, because the God of this universe loves me. And so, but the story about the golf is that, so when I went to college to study communications, I actually went on a partial golf scholarship. So I started playing when I was 12. And, but I had a really great golf game, and I had a beautiful swing. I actually loved hitting balls like off of the driving range. But when I went out to play on a golf course, I was so self-conscious, and I didn't realize it at the time. And I realized it years after, in my 30s, when I was going through counseling, just to really even understand like the root of where my life led. I realized that I have such an issue with my midsection, and I've had it my whole life. I've had a gut my whole life, and I don't enjoy talking about it, but it is the truth, and it just is what it is. And so it's always sort of been that that thorn in my side. And I could diet as much as I want, I could lose weight, but for some reason it's like just part of me. And so when I would hit a golf ball, I would swing up, right, and then you swing down, and then you finish your swing, and your arms are all the way up around the other side of you, and your whole body, your whole front is exposed. And so I grew up on golf courses, and I had to wear polos and tuck my shirt in. And so as I'm swinging up, my whole midsection is exposed, and I could not get past being uncomfortable, and it messed with my golf game always. And my dad would just always say to me, I don't understand. And he would say, even in my 20s and my 30s, he's like, you can sing and you could speak in front of thousands of people, but you could never hit a golf ball in front of 3 people. And I never knew why until I went through counseling to go sort of dig deeper into my life to figure out, well, what was holding me back from really having a fulfilling life. And I loved playing golf. And so that actually almost forced me to stop playing. And it's really sad that, and so that's something that's actually on my plate now that I really want to work through. But when I said that on my radio show, Robbie was like, "Oh, is that why you titled it Swing Wide?" And I said, "No."
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
You said the same thing. And then, just so you know, I had a client the other day, and we were talking, and she said, "It's so funny. You said something on the radio about playing golf." And I thought, is that why she titled it Swing Wide? I'm like, you're the third person who is. So there's something to it. I think my next book is going to be about self-image. That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's so fascinating to me. No matter what our struggle is, it's so fascinating that what others think of us can have such a hold on us. And it even had such a hold on you that you didn't, like a subconscious one. And ultimately, the important thing, no matter what your struggle is, no matter what's going on, the important thing is discovering who God says we are,
exactly.
Whether it's and what God thinks of us. And that plays into both your golf game and your whole identity in him.
Yeah.
And so that's it just fits so nicely in with, where we're going to go next, which is, a more sensitive issue than golfing, but such an important thing for us to discuss for sure. So, yeah, go for it.
Well, I wanted to say real quick on the other topic that nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed from then till now is that I do have a relationship with the Lord that dictates to me, because I choose daily to trust him, that he sees me the way he created me, and that I'm still okay. Like, even though I've got my life that, are a bit of a struggle, and I need to work on them, but through it all, I know that I'm loved by him. And so I'm able to get up some days when I feel like I'm down, just I'm sure like you feel, or any other woman that's listening, or even men. Mm-hmm. I still am able to say, Keri, what is the truth here? And I capture that, and I need to give that back to him and allow him to dictate to me again and again and again, who I really am and who he made me to be. That's really the essence of my story, is that, I always wanted to know who God was. Even as a little girl, I always knew that there was something more out there. I remember like daydreaming, looking out my window and wondering if there was this, God out there. And so I had all these questions, and I went to my priest, and he couldn't really answer them for me, but he encouraged me to go to this basement service in the Catholic church that I attended. And it was in that service where people were singing and reading scripture. And I'm like, what is this? Turns out it was a charismatic Catholic service, which I didn't even know what it was. And it was just this beautiful movement. And through that, I learned about who Jesus was. And I felt so connected to Jesus. It was just, he was like my best friend. I would daydream about him. And I mean, I just loved everything about Jesus. I talked about him in my Catholic high school to everybody. And then I met, my first boyfriend, who's a Christian, and he went to a local Protestant church here. And I didn't really understand the difference, but he wasn't technically walking with the Lord. But I just knew that he knew Jesus. So I was like, this is great. Well, right off the bat, I just didn't believe that he really liked me because I had such issues with, loving myself. And we ended up having, we lost our virginity to each other. And I was about 16 years old. And I remember when that happened, I didn't want to do it. And he didn't force me. It was my choice. But I remember when it happened, I felt like I lost something and I didn't get it back. And I immediately realized I just did something that I knew God didn't really want me to do. And I didn't understand that he would have forgiven me in an instant, but I just believed that was it. I was done. And so I sort of turned away from God and ended up in the arms of my best friend, who was a girl. And we just connected on a very deep, intimate level, because that's something I always desired. So as years go on, I end up going from one relationship to the next, majority women. And so, I mean, I was very, very out of whack. And I would then dabble with men and dabble with both. And it was really, really a dark season for me in my life. And the whole time, though, I was searching for just a deep intimacy. And it was Jesus who I was looking for the whole time. I was like, I just wish if I could just get back what I had when I was 16 years old. So it guided me into all these different lifestyles and different belief systems, and just searching for him. And when I was in that lifestyle, I really felt lonely, and I felt almost like a black cloud. And I know it's not the same for everyone. This is the story that I have. This is what I walk through in my life. And I'm never the person that is going to come to anyone to say, you need to change, you need to turn, because people tried to tell me, and it's not how it happened.
Right.
I ended up turning back to Jesus without any relationships, or without even the topic of homosexuality. I after so many years, I got drawn back to church, and it was through music that drew me back to church. And I had this moment in my car where I cried out to Jesus that I just couldn't do this life anymore, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I actually wasn't even in a relationship when my ex-girlfriend and I broke up. We were engaged. We ended it. Somebody asked, are you going to go back to men? Are you going to stay with women? And I said, honestly, I'm done with everything right now. And I remember saying, I don't even know who I am. Like, I don't even know who I am. And so within a few months, I started hearing, like, I would go somewhere and I would, hear the word Jesus. And I'm like, oh, that's so funny. I used to love Jesus. Or people would say, the Bible. I'm like, oh, I used to read the Bible. And eventually I remember I was at a festival, and I said to my best friend at the time, I said, I feel like I want to learn about Jesus again. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah. And so I went and bought a book on Jesus, and that was it. And then, eventually within a couple more months, I go back to church, and I experience the Lord in a very intimate way in my car. And he just revealed himself to me. But I had to say, I can't do my life without you. I don't even know where you are, but I'm just telling you, I acknowledge that you're there. And I'm telling you, I can't do my life without you. And it was a very beautiful moment that I had with the Lord in my car, with nobody else there. Nobody guided me to it. I just acknowledged his presence, and he unveiled himself to me. And so
that's why you call it, you say, this isn't a gay story, it's a love story. Like, God, you didn't feel there wasn't some moment of condemnation for the way you were living or anything like that. It was just the Lord loving you and feeling, connected to him. And he just meeting you where you're at in your car, So it's more about a love story than him trying to clean you up. He just wants to meet you where you are, and then out of that, you then took steps to say, okay, I want to find out who I am. So what are the things you've learned, like going from I know you've said before, singing in bars and, just being confused and not knowing who you were and all of this stuff, into transitioning out of this moment. Like, so what is the transformation like, and what have you learned in that process about how God views you now?
Yeah, well, all I knew is that day, I was a smoker as well. So I was pursuing music secularly. I moved out to Nashville. I lived in LA, and I just sort of stopped singing. I gave it all up because nothing felt right. And I remember that day in the car, he taught me even about worship, and that he had these goals in mind for me, for my life. Like, he had this whole life that he prepared and planned out for me, and he was just waiting for me to come around, to come back to him so he could start opening up these pathways for me. And so within the first year, I started singing again, and it was all worship. And I realized I only wanted to worship. And I know there are a lot of, Christians out there that, they sing in other places, and that's fine. But for me, I did it, and it was empty for me. And I'm like, either I'm going to sing for him or I'm not going to sing at all. But beyond that, I remember I quit smoking that day, and I remember I wanted to know all about him. And so I dove into everything I could at church and anywhere I could with organizations, and even at WDCX radio. Like, I got more involved in understanding who the preachers were on the radio. I just wanted to learn about God's character, because I said, if I'm going to trust you, if I'm going to believe that you're my one and only, if I'm going to trust that the Bible is the word of God, this is it, then I need to know you inside out, because I've done nothing but trust the world my whole life, and it just completely screwed me up, and I don't even know who to trust. So if I'm going to trust you, I want to know you so deeply, and I actually want to know you like you know me. And through that process, I built this relationship with the Lord where I do believe that I'm completely known by him, and by being known by him, it allows me to make wise decisions in life. I was single for 10 years, and it had nothing to do with me like deciding, do I want to be with women, with men. I actually put all of my, I want to say like almost like my sex drive, all of it I put on the back burner, because I'm like, this can't be what life is about. Deciding who I am, who I love, like who I'm sexually attracted to. This cannot be what life is about. So I'm going to take this label. I'm going to remove it. I'm going to put my label of Jesus on me. I'm going to learn about you. And through that, he actually changed me without me even knowing it. And it was
That's crazy.
And I was transformed by what I was reading. And I'm like, wow, you're actually an incredible God. And the more I learned, the more I fell in love with him. And I'm like, and, so of course, 10 years later, I learned how to be single. I learned how to be celibate. I learned how to, like, he actually had to change that in me too, because I had addictions. I even had addictions to pornography in that lifestyle. It was a very, very normal thing for us to engage in that. And so it's almost like I went against my nature, and it became normal, and God had to really clean me out and set me up on a new path.
Before we continue, if you're liking what you're hearing and you want more, head over to patreon.com/Macaulays to support our ministry and keep us going. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
But he did that through you seeking. Like, I'm just thinking of that verse, like you're totally embodying what he says. If you seek me, you will find me.
Yes.
And seek me first, and the rest will all happen naturally. And that's kind of what you were doing. Like, that's what I hear you saying, is like, you just went after God, and it wasn't about you trying to, clean yourself up or do this. You just wanted to know him. And as a result, everything else, there was just an overflow of his goodness in your life. And you're like embodying those verses to me right now. Yeah.
And that's what happened. And that's why I believe that I thought I was born that way. And listen, again, I'll say it till the day I die. I don't dictate anyone else's life, not what I'm called to do. But like I said, I thought I was born that way. And I used to tell people all the time. And I actually used to say, I if I had a choice, I wouldn't choose this for my life. I wouldn't choose to be gay, but I am. It's the way I'm born. It is what it is. And now I know. I'm like, wow, thank you. Actually, thank you for rescuing me out of that, because I was I was lying to myself. And I had all these desires to do things in my life, things that I'm doing now that I didn't even realize I desired, but I did even as a young girl. And he just allowed me to walk in, even doing radio or being somebody that can speak into someone's life. I've always wanted to do that, but I'm like, how can I speak in anybody's life? I'm living a life of I'm a disaster out there, but I couldn't really speak in anybody's life until I learned who he was, and through that I learned who I really am. And
who
so
you were. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just, it's always like, I'm not, it's not even I'm being careful. It's just that it's got nothing to do. I mean, I guess it has something to do with sexual identity, because that's what my Band-Aid was, I guess. But the truth is that I felt, even as a young girl, I felt incomplete. And I believe that God makes all of us to be complete in him. And because I didn't have him, I felt that I was missing something. I felt that void. And so I had to fill that void with something that was going to fulfill me, even if it was just sort of like instant. It's like I always use the analogy. I feel like the Lord taught me this through the analogy of coffee. And it's like, if you're coffee, you know what a good roasted bean tastes like. Like, it's different than instant. It's different than a Keurig. You just know good coffee. And so, I don't know. He told me this. I feel like the Lord laid this on my lap one day, and this has been the best way I can explain it. So I wanted coffee, and I ran out of coffee in my cabinet. I had no coffee left, so I had a random. This is just an analogy, of course. I had a random of instant coffee in my cabinet, and so I need my coffee quick. I need something hot. I need something to get me going. I got to do instant. I immediately taste the instant coffee, and I'm like, ugh, it's instant coffee. I don't like it, but it did the job. My
husband will so identify with this analogy. Right? I'm decaffeinated, but he will just be like amening all of this.
Okay, well then, you know what? If you like chocolate, put chocolate in it. It's the difference between a piece of good Belgium chocolate versus like the 99-cent Advent piece of chocolate that you get in the Advent calendars. It's just like a different flavor, and the richness of it. So I knew the richness of the coffee, and then I tasted the instant. But I went with the instant because it became easy. And then day after day, I keep forgetting to go get the good stuff. I keep drinking the instant. Eventually it becomes a distant thing where I might only drink really good roasted coffee on a holiday or on a special occasion. And that's how I viewed, that's how I can replace love and my search for love, that I just kept going for the instant gratification because I needed it so bad. I just did not have the patience to wait. And mine happened to be with a girl because I felt intimately connected, because I'm an intimate person and I didn't have the intimacy with the Lord.
Right. And I mean, that's your story, but every single one of us has that thing that we're looking to fill. And we are so misguided a lot of the times. And it isn't until we allow the Lord to speak into us who he says we are, and and view us with his eyes, that we're just constantly chasing whatever it is. It can be, TV shows to numb us from our pain. Right. It can be chocolate. It can be, you name it. It can be relationships, but ultimately, it's about that love story. It's finding out who the real, that coffee bean. I like that analogy.
Well, so, honestly, it's being connected with who actually made you.
Right.
Like who created me? Somebody created me. And if I'd rather go to that source to get the blueprint of my life, to know exactly how to live the way I was made to live, versus somebody in the world telling me how to live. And I was operating very independently of God. I was dependent on myself in the world. And the reason why I couldn't get to him is because I had this big wall of pride where I was like, I know me best. Nobody knows me. I know me. It wasn't until I said, like, I actually can't do this without you. And he's like, good. Finally.
Who else? Yeah, who else can tell you about yourself and fill your heart than the person who made it? The one who made it, and
Exactly.
it's just you that's why we always have to go back to him. And there still are so many people searching, and I'm sure there's listeners out there that right now that this is like opening their eyes, and it doesn't have to be just similar to your story. It can be anything.
Right.
Where are we looking elsewhere? Where are our eyes set? Where are we wanting satisfaction from? All of this stuff. And but your story in particular, it could hit home with people in that one thing. Before we go, I just want you to, I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but I feel like you could speak into this is because the gay lifestyle and all that, this is new for believers, for the Christian community, and because it's different and all of that, there's like this fear attached, and so often we don't know how to respond, and because of that, we usually don't respond well.
Right.
Because this podcast is like lessons I learned, and this is all about love. Like we want God met you with love and grace and compassion, and the church should be doing the same. And so how can we, as a Christian community, better respond or handle this whole issue and the people associated who are all just like us? We're all just looking for the right love, the satisfying love. So how could you speak into that maybe just a little bit, because you've probably run into this, I imagine.
Well,
all the time.
And some people don't like my answer, and but and some do. And I guess my goal now is to offer a fresh perspective. I've been recently noticing, as believers, as Christians, we're so used to calling out sin and slapping a scripture on it.
Right.
I just don't think it's just not working anymore. And so the one thing I've learned is, even myself, because I still have a lot of friends that are in the LGBTQ community, and I have to operate with the right motive. So what's my motive? Is my motive just to get this person to cross line because I don't like what they're doing? Or is my motive because I actually love this person? Like, I just love this person. I love my friend. I want the best for my friend, no different than anybody would want the best for me. And I find that, I may have found a truth that actually could help someone, whether they realize they need help or not. And so a lot of times, anybody living in the gay lifestyle, they may not necessarily share all of their fears and what they're dealing with inside. There's deep stuff going on in all of us, and so we don't ever really have a safe place to share our stuff, right? Our junk, right? So
the place that should be a safe place is not a safe place right now. That's the thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that person might end up running to a safer place, which might be, the gay community, the LGBTQ community, where it becomes a safe knit family and then it's within that family where it's constantly letting you know, this is who you are. You are you are gay. You are gay. You are gay. And I was in that, and I was like, okay, I guess I am. I guess I'm gay, because I had really nobody else fighting for the other side for me. And so I guess we can encourage, if you're listening and you're a Christian and you've got somebody in your life that is, homosexual or, transgender, or is living differently sexually than you are. I guess the first thing I could say is just acknowledge, like, who you're talking to. Is this person somebody that actually is interested in knowing who God is? Or is it somebody that maybe can care less? Because that's two different conversations. I could talk to somebody who can care less about God. They're not going to hear a word I say anyway. So either then I decide, well, is this somebody I actually want in my life or not? So I might let that person go, and maybe somebody else can encourage them along the way. It may not be for me. If there is somebody in my life that I meet that is curious about God or Jesus, then I don't automatically put homosexuality in front of them. I just talk to them about the thing that brought me back to the Lord. And it's him. What do you want to know about God? I'll tell you all about God. I'm going to actually leave that off the table, because I know typically that's the one thing that you actually want to know my opinion on. And it's like, it doesn't matter at this point.
Yeah.
You're curious.
That's so good.
You're curious. So that's already a thumbs up for me that you actually want to know the same God that I'm talking about. And so thank you for giving me an opportunity to share my heart about God, who actually did change my life. I actually want to know, who are you? What is your life like? What do you like? What are your quirks? What makes you laugh? What kind of movies do you like? I mean, actually get into a relationship with someone, because we serve a relational God. Like, it's about relationships. And if you don't have the time to be in the relationship, then you know what? Maybe you might back off a little bit, because I feel like sometimes it does more damage than not, because then it gives, I hate to say it, but it like gives us a bad rep. Not all of us are, I'm not a bigot. I mean, I sometimes get called a bigot, but maybe because I have a different stance. But I always say, you know what, if you just give me a chance to talk and explain how I feel, no different than you want the space to talk and you want equal respect. So it goes both ways. And so again, on the other end, parents who struggle where their children are, are gay, and the child's in their face saying, you better accept me or nothing. Well, I tell the parent, you know what, it actually goes both ways. So if they want respect from you, then there's no reason why you can't say, you know what, then would you be willing to listen to me too? Can we have an open forum here? You may not agree with me and I don't agree with you, but if we can actually listen to each other, and take a step back. And I say this to Christians all the time. Look, you are strong enough to withstand that conversation. If you don't feel you're strong enough, then I encourage you to go back to the word and get stronger, because we should be able to handle somebody coming to me and saying they're gay. What are you going to do about it? Oh, okay. I just had a girl, it was at Kingdom Bound, who approached me, and she was very angry with me. And she's like, I'm a lesbian and I love God. And I'm like, okay. Like, what, well, I didn't like your message. Okay, well, but this is my story. So, you might be offended, but we could be equally offended at each other. But at some point, we have to find the gap here and build this bridge, because it comes down to relationships and truly loving someone.
And we take that up with God. It's like, okay, you love God, then whenever we chase after him, he will reveal things. And when like he said, seek me, you'll find me. We won't ever be disappointed. We may be challenged and refined and all of that, but ultimately we're not disappointed. And you said earlier in this podcast, you've always wanted to have a voice and be able to speak into people's lives. And it doesn't always look the way we think, that the way we would like to. And I'm right there in with you. I speak a very uncomfortable message, but there's authority when you've lived something and you know the word of God and the truth, has set you free from that. It just, you carry authority. And so, for me, somebody like me, I often don't feel, too much authority or feel like I could speak into it, because, I haven't crossed paths with it the way that, you have. You carry an authority with you, and it's important that Christians hear your message, and that we learn to listen. Like you said, we all need to learn to listen, and rather than just posting whatever we want on Facebook and have kind of like an aggressive stance, we need to have an open posture and understand that the Lord loves all of us and is working on all of us.
Well, man, this I have to say this because I want people to know where I'm coming from. When somebody asks me if homosexuality is sin, my answer is yes. But I want to explain why it's sin. And the only way I can explain it is how I came to learn what sin was. And I don't believe that God is sitting up there wanting to just smack our hands because we're doing something wrong. If I'm going against the order that God naturally created for me, what happens is I start experiencing shame. So if I were to go steal something, I'm immediately going to feel shame. I could choose to ignore the shame. And the more I ignore it, the more I'm able to steal. Yeah. And so, but if I acknowledge the shame, then it's like, oh, wow, I'm feeling this conviction. And it's from my maker who's like, Keri, I love you. I didn't just make you to follow my rules. there is a natural order to this so that you don't experience pain and suffering.
Right. It's for your best.
Want me to experience pain and suffering. And because I was with women for years, let me tell you, you wrote a book on friends. Okay. Imagine the struggle that we have as girlfriends, right? As friends. The amount of emotion, Danielle, that you can bring to the table, and the amount of emotion I could bring to the table.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Together under one roof in a very sexual relationship, it is like it could be explosive, and it was.
That's exactly the word that was coming out of my mouth. Explosive. Yes. Yeah.
And hey, listen, there might be other relationships out there, and that's fine. All I'm saying is, for me, is I learned that it was sin because I actually experienced this distance from God. That I'm like, where are you? I know you're here. What am I doing that is keeping this distance? I don't know what I'm doing. And I remember, I have it in my journal. I even wrote it in my book. I didn't write much in my journal as a young girl, but I wrote enough to help give me some timeline. But I said, what did I do? I actually wrote this when I was in college. In a relationship with a girl, what sin did I commit that made you leave me, God? Like, that's what I wrote. And so, and so the word sin, again, gets thrown around. And the moment somebody hears it, they shut down. I'm like, but wait a minute. Like, but what is it really? And it always comes back to love.
Yeah. Well, he's our loving heavenly father. He's our loving dad. And what I always try to communicate to my boys as a parent is, when we are putting confines on you, and we're putting, rules and boundaries and discipline, all of that stuff isn't because we're sitting at night after you go to bed going, ha, 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 we're just putting all these confines on you. No, it's because we so desperately love you, and we know best for you, and we want best for you. And it's just the same. That's just what the Lord wants for all of us.
Yes.
Is his best,
That's it.
Oh man, this has been so good. Oh. All right, Keri, before we go, where can people go to pick up a copy of this book? I'm assuming you're maybe pre-order it. I know it's coming out like this fall. But tell not only that, but where everyone can go, your social media, your website. Just give us the rundown so we can get a hold of you.
Sure. So, yes, as of today, which is what, August 8th.
8th. I can see it on my computer right here.
Yeah.
8th.
So my book officially releases on October 1st, 2019. And so right now you can pre-order, and once if you pre-order with me, then I'll get the book out to you. And you can get everything all about me at KeriCardinale.com, and it's Keri. I always say like the lotion Keri, but then I realize people that are younger than me are like, we don't know what lotion you're talking about. So it's Keri, and then Cardinale is like the cardinal bird with an E at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed that today when I was, And I know exactly the lotion you're talking about, Keri.
Oh yeah. I know.
It's sad. Yeah.
And then also same thing on social media. I'm on, Facebook, Instagram, just under the same name, Keri Cardinale, which is why I told my husband, Phil, just give me a little time before I answer.
Well, Phil, if you even cared to listen to this girl conversation, just know that you are welcome over to the Macaulay's house, and Keri can be your tag along. She's invited too.
Perfect.
And you guys come over and hang out with the Macaulays. But in the meantime, thank you so much for taking the time out and just sharing. You have something to say, Keri. You're talking about important issues, not just for women, for men too. And I'm just so glad that you were one of my first podcast guests. I got another one in the can here. I'm so glad about. So thank you so much.
Well, I'm beyond honored. Thank you. And it was so nice even just to chat with you, and you're just so easy to talk to, and so I appreciate you hearing me out and allowing my story to be told, and I'm so excited for you. I'm excited for your podcast.
Thank you. All right, Keri. Well, listeners, you can definitely go on and check out Keri online and grab that book. And in the meantime, make sure you check out my next podcast next week.
Good, very needed conversation. I'm sure there's lots of thoughts swirling around right now, but ultimately, I want Keri's message to point us all to God, our Maker. He has the authority on who you are. Like the manufacturer of a watch knows exactly how and why it ticks, as your Maker, God knows you intricately, exactly how you tick. He's the only one who holds the right to define you. So, I urge you to do as Keri did. Swing wide the doors of your heart and allow God to speak to you and tell you who you are. And never, ever, ever settle for instant coffee. I hope you've been encouraged, challenged, and have learned something new today. It is my passion to help women become the best version of themselves with God's help. All the ministry we do, we feel deeply called to, and we live by faith doing it. Would you consider supporting our ministry at patreon.com/Macaulays? That's patreon.com/MACAULAYS. You may see a link on your screen nearby if you're tuning in using YouTube, SoundCloud, or my website. But if not, that's where you can go to find us. We are grateful for every one of you who believe in us and champion our ministry. Lots and lots of love, Danielle.